beginning, Canto 2, Chapter 3, text number 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Sukha Uvacha Evam Etan Nigadhetam Prishtavan Yad Bhavan Mama Nrinam Yan Mriyanmananam Manushyeshu Manishanam. Shukadev Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. And the purport by Srila Prabhupada. In human society all over the world, there are millions and billions of men and women, and almost all of them are less intelligent because they have very little knowledge of spirit, soul. Almost all of them have a wrong conception of life, where they identify themselves with the gross and subtle material bodies, which they are not, in fact. They may be situated in different high and low positions in the estimation of human society, but one should note definitely that unless one inquires about his own self beyond the body and the mind, all his activities in human life are total failures. Strong language. Therefore, out of thousands and thousands of men, one may inquire about his spirit self, and thus consult the revealed scriptures like Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. But in spite of reading and hearing such scriptures, unless one is in touch with a realized spiritual master, he cannot actually realize the real nature of self, etc. And out of thousands and hundreds of thousands of men, someone may know what Lord Krishna is, in fact. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 20, verses 122-123, it is said that Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, prepared the Vedic literatures in the incarnation of Vyasadeva for reading by the intelligent class of men in a human society which is almost totally forgetful of the genuine relation with Krishna. Even such an intelligent class of men may be forgetful in their relation with the Lord. The whole Bhakti Yoga process is therefore a revival of the lost relation. This revival is possible in the human form of life, which is obtained only out of the evolutionary cycle of 8,400,000 species of life. The intelligent class of human being must take a serious note of this opportunity. Not all human beings are intelligent, so the importance of human life is not always understood. Therefore, manishinam, meaning thoughtful, is particularly used here. A manishinam person, like Maharaj Parikshit, must therefore take to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and fully engage himself in devotional service, hearing, chanting, etc., of the holy name and pastimes of the Lord, which are all Harikatamrita. This action is especially recommended when one is preparing for death. There's a current situation within ISKCON. Kadamba Kananda Swami has been diagnosed as having a certain type of cancer that his doctors told him it's slow but certain, and there's nothing they can do to arrest it. It's a certain type of cancer. I don't know the details. And so he's starting in a thoughtful way to send out messages about meeting death. not only for himself, obviously, but for the rest of us. So it's going to be an interesting journey because his thoughtfulness is profound. He may be known to many devotees as for his kirtans, and to other devotees they may know him for his um, organizational ability. I'll share one little example. We'll go back to what the greater part of what he has to offer. For some period of time, there was I can't remember what it was called, GBC Com, GBC, a group of devotees, something like 12 devotees. So some members of Mayapur and some GBC people and some other professional people and so forth. They were tasked. I was part of that group, tasked with building a strategic plan for Mayapur. A strategic plan for Mayapur. So it kind of went on for a couple of years. Some professionals from Calcutta were hired, and they were young, energetic, intelligent, and good presenters. But it really took Kadamba Swami to stitch the pieces together and made it really understandable, very clear. And he was, he wasn't a full-time member of that little group, but he was an essential person to help bring and put in place, because there's lots of things without all the things. Land issues and government issues and utilization issues and priority issues and so many, education and householders and agriculture and Varnashram Dharma and so many things that had to be taken into consideration. So my experience in working with him in that way was he was, although part-time, very gifted and an essential person to help bring that strategic plan together. And a little back when Prabhupada's departure occurred, he took responsibility, living in Mayapur, for the construction of Prabhupada's samadhi. When the samadhi was completed, he moved on to Vrindavan and became the president of Vrindavan. And he had to stop being president of Vrindavan because somebody shot him. And so he moved on to some other services. But, very capable. Very capable. So aside from those, the kirtan and his organizational abilities, etc., he's now going to provide another nice service and helping people understand the essential steps of preparation for leaving one's body, because that's the question here. This is Maharaj Parikshit hearing from Shukadev Goswami an answer to his question. It does say intelligent, but because he is intelligent, Maharaj Parikshit can be rightly called as intelligent, but for anybody, intelligent or not so intelligent, we're all going to leave our body, and whether you're intelligent or not, what are you to do when you get notice? That was Maharaj Parikshit was noticed, Kadamba Swami is noticed, and Maharaj Parikshit had much less time, 7 days, and Kadamba Swami was told 1 year. I mean, it's not the first time ISKCON senior persons have been notified by their primary caregiving physicians. Their days are limited, without going through other examples. he's the contributions he's making that I've seen so far are really spectacular, very motivational and sobering because there are older devotees in our society, and the saying goes 10 little Indians, 9 little Indians, 8 little Indians. We're all going to depart at some point. And where we are in that trajectory may not be at the point of age where he is, may be wherever. And time flies. That was one of his recent messages. And who knows what's next. Therefore, every moment that remains should be very, 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 that's 3 varies, carefully utilized. Moments should be carefully utilized. And if you're complacent, they're not. And if you're fearful, it's not the best utilization. Although in the 6th canto, 1st chapter, Narada is explaining that fear, he is likening Kamsa to one who was very Krishna conscious, not in devotional consciousness, but Krishna conscious out of fear. And he makes the statement that fear is a really, very strong motivator to fix your mind on something, that which you're afraid of. As I'm speaking, I'm thinking, on the way coming from Florida, driving on the Florida Turnpike, and, careful driver, wasn't speeding or anything, staying in his lane. And I was on the right side, he was on the driver's side. And here comes a car changing lanes and almost crashing into us. And I'm surprised our driver didn't swerve. He saw him coming. He didn't beep his horn. And somehow we didn't collide because the driver, I guess, saw us, that he was heading for a collision, so he pulled over. He went back to his lane. It's just like changing lanes into the side of our car. So what do you think of in that moment? I could spin out with some stories of what devotees told me they thought of in that moment when it was a near calamity. One devotee shared, they screamed at the top of their lungs Krishna's name. They were surprised, but they weren't really thinking of Krishna. They just screamed Krishna's name. And then there's some realization. So we don't know in this moment, next moment, next moment. So the previous 2 verses had everything to do with the subject matter that you hear, sound vibration. Fundamental to Bhagavad Dharma is sound vibration in relation to Bhagavan. That's Bhagavat. Prana, Bhagavat, Dharma, Bhagavan, in relation to Bhagavan, Bhagavat. And while we're hearing Bhagavat Katha, how mindful are we? In varying degrees, more or less, often too much less. And what's the purpose of the Bhagavat Katha? It's not just to prepare us to meet the moment of death. once one thing one can say that's a purpose. So the mind, because that's one of the verses in the conclusion of the previous chapter. Mana ratir, when the mind has some rati, some ecstatic attachment for the personality of Godhead. But the ecstatic attachment is where sustained mindfulness, that's that whole topic, mindfulness topic. Prabhupada explains that when we chant, it's very simple, very simple. When we chant, it's a call for a relationship with Krishna, a relationship where, in Prabhupada's words, "O energy of Krishna, O dear Lord Krishna, please accept me in your service." And then he explains it's a call for a relationship. When the relationship feature of our lives becomes more in focus, the relationship with Krishna feature in our lives becomes more in focus, then it follows that some attachment that's now far from us, we're attached to temporary. And that's an obstacle. Attachment to temporary is an obstacle for attachment for the eternal. There's different ways of detailing, take that attachment to the temporary and unpack it, and it's so many things, and very entangling and very powerful. The force of Maya is very powerful. Why is the force of Maya very powerful? It's Krishna's energy. That's why it's very powerful. But there's another feature, and that is we're attached to it. We're attached to it, to Maya, because of turning our attention away from Krishna. And to turn our attention again to Krishna, the method is spiritual sound, that's Krishna sound. But we're not attentive to the Krishna sound because we're attentive to the illusory feature, wishing to be an enjoyer of the illusory feature. Now, we don't call this little philosophy, we don't call the material feature as false. Someone was saying like this somewhere, they heard, but it's not a fact, that this material world is but a dream. But even dreams, it's an energy. It's not false in the absolute sense of false, because if it's false, it just doesn't exist. And if you're a Mayavadi, then it doesn't exist. It's mithya. But it's false in the sense that it's not temporary. It's not what it appears to be. A shadow or a reflection exists. It's not what the real object is, but it exists. A mirage is not water, but it's something. It's a reflection of reflection of the sun on sand. And that reflection of the sun on sand is what a mirage is. Not water, but it's something. Anyway, we're attracted, or more than attracted, we're attached. But the attachment to the temporary has everything to do with desire. And that the orbit of material desire is the default place when desire in relation to Krishna is turned away from. And when you turn away from, it's very simple. Prabhupada's example I like. When you're facing the sun, you only see light. When you turn your back to the sun, you see shadow, the absence of light. And there's not a third thing. So then the desire is, the devotional desire is cleansing of the distraction, and we all know what distraction feels like. I don't know how your japa was this morning. I know my japa this morning was quite distracted for a variety of reasons, and that's not good japa. And so then, how to get to the place where there isn't distraction? Well, it starts with desire. And what, if the relation with Krishna, not just the mantra, because the mantra doesn't change, it's how we interact with the mantra, how we interact with our relationship with Krishna, how strong or weak is our desire for a relationship with Krishna. The medicine, the cure for the disease of distraction is spiritual sound. And that was this verse, Shukadeva Goswami's saying, I've now answered your question. What is it that a person who knows they're going to die, what is it that they should do? They should hear spiritual sound. And in a qualitative way where the relation with Krishna is the objective. Reviving the relationship with Krishna is the objective. Supposing one doesn't have that objective. Supposing one just doesn't like the disturbance. Lots of people don't like the disturbance, and in that disturbed state, the affinity for matter is prominent. So negation is one option. But negation isn't positive. It's negation. And it's not sustainable because there's a desire for relationship. There's a desire for happiness. And if we don't have a spiritual conception, then the restraint of the mind and senses from various processes, it's not sustainable. It can be likened to making wet wood dry wood, which is nice, but the real purpose of the dry wood is fire or build a house. But you don't build a house with wet wood. So it's functionable when the mind and senses are under control, and then higher purposes can be served. But what's that higher purpose? What's the mission? So they don't na te vidu svartakatim hi Vishnu, celebrated phrase of Prahlad. So the message of Shukadeva Goswami is to know, vid means to know, one's sva artha, one's real purpose, it's through sound. So we can hear it through Prahlad, or in a broader sense, the Bhagavatam, or a more specific sense, Shukadeva Goswami, who is narrating to Maharaj Parikshit, including the narrations that took place before with Maitreya and Vidura, etc., or the Navyogendras and King Nimi. And so other narrators may be there, but Shukadeva Goswami, the sound of the Srimad Bhagavatam is to awaken remembrance of Krishna. And remembrance of Krishna implies we're meant to serve him. That means knowledge of the self, which is what Prabhupada is saying here in the purport. I'll read it again. First sentence of the purport. In human society, all over the world, there are millions and billions of men and women, and almost all of them are less intelligent because they have very little knowledge of the spirit soul. There we are again. Know yourself. They may be situated in different high and low positions in the estimation of human society, but one should know definitely that unless one inquires about his own self beyond the body and mind, All his activities in human life are total failures. Next sentence. Therefore, out of thousands and thousands of men, one may inquire about his spirit self. So, to draw attention to Krishna is part of knowing yourself, or knowing yourself, part of knowing yourself is to know about Krishna, because we're part of Krishna. Self-realization, independent of realization of Krishna, is not self-realization. Self-realization includes realization of one's relationship with Krishna. Complete self-realization or full self-realization. So that's the effect of Bhagavad Gita, hearing topics in relation to Krishna. And each of us are in different positions in the spiritual path. And even each of us, from time to time, where the sine curve program is going on, sometimes more attentive, sometimes less, sometimes more conscious, sometimes less, sometimes more thoughtful. This Manishinam word, more thoughtful, sometimes less, sometimes most of the time distracted. But nonetheless, the medicine or the cure, or the Bhagavad Gita process is recommended. And to take it, that requires being very intelligent. Or say it the other way, those who do are most intelligent. I was hearing one devotee speak. Is this a joke? Referring to Jayadvaita Swami. And Jayadvaita Swami said, hearing Srila Prabhupada describe Vedic cosmology, I didn't have a problem. When I heard Prabhupada describe women are less intelligent, I didn't have a problem. Some things that are controversies in ISKCON, that the moon is further above. Just this morning I heard Prabhupada say the moon is the closest planet. But anyway, in the vertical structure of the universe, the moon is above the sun, not radially outward. The sun is further away, but in the vertical. So, hearing that the sun is closer than the moon, I had no problem. But when I heard that devotees are most intelligent, that I had a problem with. I'm sure he said it with a big smile. So it is a symptom of intelligence to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, regardless of one's quality and character, because it's meant to cleanse those lower features of guna and karma and elevate the soul till it becomes guna and karma free. At least the potency, the potential is there for that to happen. Now, specifically, the verse is saying for the intelligent people, so that's already Lord of Goodness people. Now, Maharaj Parikshit was a king, so that means he had, Raja. But he's also very intelligent because he's Krishna Bhakta. And so for those who are intelligent, what are they to do when notice is given? And since we know that notice, imminent departure from this body, notice may not be given. It may happen suddenly, just like a car accident, and you're finished. No time for putting your hand in your bead bag. It's like it's over. So, what's the preparation? That's part of the message of built into the question. It's like in first canto for a man who's about to die. So it's later or sooner, we're all about to die. So what are we doing to prepare ourselves for that? Just mention it lightly because we all know how much investment of time and energy is placed in education. Education so that when a young person grows up and they have to maintain themselves, they have a reasonable means to maintain themselves, and the vehicle to get that reasonable maintenance is education. And largely it's seen that way. It's a tool to get, you know, a satisfactory, reasonable kind of personal maintenance. And then um, comes another phase that, devotees here and there ask about: how should I arrange for retirement? How much and where, and so looking to the future is the point. There's always something, and then there's something, at least in terms of the body and the welfare of the body, that people consider. And then what about the ultimate? Is there something that we should be doing now about the ultimate? Because we don't know about retirement. We do know we're going to die. And so what's to be done? An intelligent person is being instructed in the Bhagavatam to hear Bhagavad Gita. When hearing Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't mean it's a silver bullet. You don't need to think of anything else. Now, if one is on the platform like Raghunath Das Goswami, then you may be able to practically stop eating and stop bodily necessities. But everyone else, there's something that we need to do to live in the world in a theistic manner. So we concern ourselves with practical navigating our way through the practical affairs of life while internally cultivating Krishna consciousness. But that's both are resting upon Bhagavad Gita, because practical is also included in the Bhagavatam. Not all details and details and details, but principles. It's full. It's there. There's another point I wanted to make, just went away. The society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, was established by our founder Acharya, and prior to him, the other disciplic succession members. Vaishnava Vishwa Raja Sabha, before him, was a term that Bhaktivinoda used, and then Bhaktisiddhanta picked up, and then so the structure has a purpose, and the purpose is to come together because the social needs are there, and the spiritual needs are there. Yeah. Because we're a spiritual organization, it doesn't mean we neglect the psychophysical nature of persons around us. We should be thoughtful and attentive. While I was in Alachua, they had a memorial service for Gora Hari, Prabhupada disciple that I knew way back when. And one of the things that I understood from that memorial service was, aside from Gaur Hari's wonderful qualities, the community's wonderful qualities in taking care of him apparently for nearly a year, where he didn't go to the hospice in Vrindavan. He stayed in Lachua. He couldn't, because of his health situation, he couldn't afford his mortgage payments. So some devotees made his mortgage payments. Some other devotees were kind of like his personal caregiver. There was two or three that took turns, and the community came regularly and read to him and had kirtan in his, because he was I don't know what his health problem was, but that was known that it was terminal, and they just really took care of him. And I'm sure they felt some satisfaction in rendering service to a helpless person who needed their help. But the gesture went in respect to the years and years and years of outstanding service that he did. Now, that's another feature of what this message says. So my point is not only hearing and chanting, it's all of the other extending care in the holistic picture of extending care to one another. And caring persons and cultured persons know how to do that. And they do that. But at the center, at the center, is Bhagavad Gita. Let's see if there's some discussion. This is a nice chapter, devotional service, change in heart. From that hearing Bhagavad Gita, the heart changes. We'll hear some more. Yeah.
I have one.
Go ahead, speak.
Hare Krishna.
Go
I
ahead.
have one curious question on.
One curious
question on your japa distractions, Maharaj. So, what do you do when you get distractions, Maharaj? When you're doing japa.
Bring the mind back. Isn't it?
Yeah, but like what I was told is like when some thought is keep bugging me, like I was told like okay, pause for a minute and then process the thought. Like
Okay, that's an option.
yeah, can you do something?
Let's bring the mind back. You may have steps in bringing the mind back, but bring the mind back.
Instead of fighting the thought.
There are different procedures. So what you're suggesting is one procedure. Some persons don't need that procedure. They just have a parking lot, and it goes over in the parking lot. And they stay focused on what they're doing. And if those that have that capacity, they go to the parking lot and the thing is not there anymore. But sometimes it's still there. Depends. Different persons have the technique or mechanics or methods or tools, procedures. They can be very varied. The essence, however, even in suggesting this method or any of the other number of methods, the essence is being absorbed in one's relationship with Krishna. Supposing, here's a for example, supposing you have very deep attachment for someone and they have a medical emergency and you've somehow arranged to get them in the car and or an ambulance, you put them in the car and you're going swiftly to the hospital, to the emergency room or whatever. There may be distractions, but you have a mission to get them to the hospital. So that's that's an essence, is the purpose of chanting. And if you can connect with the purpose of chanting, it can dissipate distractions. Light dissipates darkness. So there's different ways of going about it. Your question was what to do, and then you're telling me what to do.
No, Maharaj, like I was told that. So
Okay,
I
that's
wanted to
fine.
know,
That's
like,
fine.
if you do a different.
I don't do that. Yeah. Well, his point is if there's a particular, a stone in your shoe, you stop and take the stone out of your shoe. And then you continue walking. You process what it is. So, that's one way to go.
Thank you, Maharaj. And another curious thing, like for me, like when I get distractions, Maharaj, like there are so many things like family matters, like job or like the worldly affairs that I'm dealing with. But I'm curious, like what kind of issues distract you, Maharaj? Like your disciples' progress or like your
Oh, there's so many things.
health.
Like he said, the ocean has so many waves. And sometimes it's this and sometimes it's that. It's, the ocean has so many waves. I like that phrase. It's not, I wouldn't say there's a theme. And, different times it's some things, and at other times it's some other things. Theme, based or theme oriented. Something else.
You mentioned
Yes. Oh,
as you mentioned, yes, probably your pursuit, but you also said that the cognitive time may be shorter. So my question to you, Maharaj, is that at that last moment when if we are not cognitive and we can't remember Krishna, does the lifetime of service of sadhana count at that time?
of course. No, it's not. Our previous sadhana is accounted for, or there's spiritual strength, and there's the reciprocation from Krishna because of that previous sadhana, and establishing one's relationship with Krishna, and how important that was for us. Not just volumes of doing things; it's our relationship with Krishna, and we may be unconscious, but Krishna's not. Now, what's going to happen is that it's all in Krishna's hands in any case. So he can do what he wants to do. And he will do what he wants to do. And we can't predicate what he's going to do other than acknowledge that Krishna is very kind and whatever he does is kind. But there's no certainty. He's not bound by rules. He's the independent autocrat. And we're his servant. I saw videos of him dancing during kirtan. It was like, wow, totally animated. I was thinking, I don't know what his doctor would say. Is he burning up the reserve that he has, or is he doing the right? Anyway, that thought occurred, and he's doing what he's doing, and he's very purposeful in all of what he's doing. Very purposeful, very focused. Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure not only his voice and other skills that he has, the calling for Krishna feature is going to start becoming more and more prominent and noticeable, because that's where his consciousness is going more and more. So, it's a really wonderful example for us. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's departure was similar. Sridhar Swami's departure was similar. Tamal Krishna's departure was sudden, very, very different. And Krishna has his plan. And we have our relationship with Krishna.
So do you think, Maharaj, that Bhakti Maharaj knew that he was leaving?
That he did what?
That he knew that he was leaving?
I don't know. I don't know. Medically, my understanding is he had a certain firm desire. The person's when it was said that he won't live unless he gets in that whatever that contraption is, that medical, he didn't want to do it, but he submitted to the GBC. The GBC considered, they said he should do it. And so he, on the medical side, he wasn't conscious. Now, whether Krishna from within his heart awakened his consciousness at the moment or before that, something, I can't say. For sure, one can say Krishna is very kind, and Krishna acknowledged his incredible devotion. And one can say, from that book that he wrote, his attraction and Prabhupada's recognition of his attraction indicates in previous lifetime he was also engaged. So where is he today? It's easy to say he went back to Godhead. And it's easier to say Krishna is going to decide where he will place him to continue in his service. And that's back to Godhead, whatever that is. That's the kind of mood that he had. If there was some service, he was ready to roll up his sleeves and do what he could do. So that mood of service to Krishna and to the Vaishnavas is with him wherever he is, in the spiritual world or wherever he is, serving Krishna in ways that Krishna wants. Just some indication, and there he is, doing that service. That's the kind of devotion. That's how I know him. It's easy for the benefit of, particularly for the benefit of disciples, to say for sure and certain he's with Krishna. And here's the reason for my making that declaration. For any one of us, let's take Prabhupada, for example. Prabhupada was always with Krishna. There was never a time when he was not. So if Krishna wanted Prabhupada to go here or there, or Goloka, or anything he wanted. So that's a disposition I like. We could say I prefer. It's in Krishna's hands. And that naturally the devotee wants to be with Krishna. At the same time, the devotee wants to be engaged in meaningful service with Krishna. And so the internal absorption is everything, not the geographic location. Anything else?
There's a question online, Maharaj.
Okay.
It's by Amara Mataji. We generally get inspired by persons who went through a situation like ours and went beyond. all the acharyas are at very high level of consciousness from beginning of their lives, but I am not. How can we leave aside this thought and still be able to derive inspiration from acharyas' lives?
Well, there's lots of persons that don't meet those criteria that you mentioned, that from the very beginning they were superlative by their material circumstances. That's not so. So many. Haridas Thakur, for example, but so many. So many. Narada in his previous life, but he became perfect. And who was Narada before he was Narada? That's also described. He was cursed to become a Shudra from his previous life. So that so how do you process that? You don't have to be a card carrying member of the all auspicious features of life in order to achieve spiritual perfection. That's how do you process those concerns? Hit the delete button.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. How can we help a person who is not into Krishna consciousness and who has diagnosed with some serious disease and he has not much time?
It depends, is my standard answer for a question like that. With the right association, such persons can, not will necessarily, but they can develop a spiritual affinity if they have spiritual association. So at least, well wishing and gestures of kindness and caring, etc., so that person feels cared for, and when the person feels cared for, they know that you're a devotee, but you're not pushing devotion in their face. Then it may awaken, because it's a very fragile condition and people know it. So you just be good association and express kindness according to what's appropriate for the person and the relationship. In some cases, there's no movement at all. In some cases, there's radical movement. One devotee shared with me an amazing story that he and his wife and family are devotees. The father was objecting to their being devotees. That didn't give me the details, like this, you should be more concerned with your career and those things. The material well-being feature of life while you're doing this thing. Then he was hit with some disease. So the devotee went to be with his father. And there was a devotee friend who said, because it knew him from years and years and years ago, I will offer prayers to Radha Shyama in Vrindavan that your father has a change of heart. And miraculously, it's not like the cause and effect, but the father had change of heart. And he who was saying, don't do this, why are you doing this? He wanted to go to Vrindavan. Something moved. And he went to Vrindavan to stay in the hospice. Within 24 hours, he left his body in Vrindavan. And around him was kirtan and pictures of Krishna. So maybe the merit of his son was passed on to the father. Maybe it was prayers. So maybe it was combination. But so you according to, it depends. According to the person, then and the relationship with the person, you You have to decide what would be appropriate. You don't want to push because they can push back, but if you're, show inside at least exhibiting your Krishna consciousness and outside behavior and speech according to the relationship and the person's situation and your prayers. And the rest depends on the person and how things unfold. There will be situations in life like this for all of us. Okay, we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.